All right, guys. Welcome to another weekly training, guys. It's going to be on October 14, 2025. I had to double check the date. That's how you know it's live, guys. You see the light behind me. I can't even set this up, guys. All right. So today's training is going to be actually pretty special. I see you guys in the actual webinar waiting room. I see you guys on Facebook and also see you guys on Instagram live. All right. We're going to go over a few different topics just so you can be as successful as possible with this business and business in general, because let's just be realistic, guys. The same principles that we talk about here, you literally can apply to any business, whether it's a home service business, a cleaning business, whatever, guys, right? So if you're watching this live, meaning it's 7 p.m. Central Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, or if you're all over the world, I want you to comment live below. Comment live, all right? And if you're watching the replay, and again, this will not apply on Instagram because there's no replay available. If you're watching the replay, I want you to comment not Instagram. I want you to comment replay below. Comment replay. And the reason why is because number one, it helps with engagement. If you guys are on Facebook, if you're on YouTube or Instagram, but also I get to see who's on here, so I can send you a copy after the fact, especially if you registered, right? So, I got a question, guys. I got a question for you guys, right? So, how many of you guys were affected with that like crypto dump? And I'm not gonna say it was just crypto alone, but it was more of like international politics, the man, the myth, the legend himself in office, right? I want you to comment me below, comment me, right? And the reason I ask is because I'm pretty sure it's been some of you guys, because for me, I actually just did a post on this. I lost like $150,000 in a day. Absolutely bonkers. And the crazy part is I didn't even know. I just got my email updates because I get like a daily update from this tracker. And randomly I was going through unread messages. I'm like, wait, what's that negative? Why does that have 6 digits? I was like, oh my goodness. I just realized because you get so caught up in business. And the reason I can laugh about it, because, years ago, if I told myself I lost $150,000 in a day, like in assets, I would have just lost my mind. I would have been like that influencer that, hurt themselves or whatever. But ultimately what it came down to is cash flow. It really comes down to cash flow, because once you just focus on cash flow, you start realizing a lot of this other stuff doesn't matter. You kind of been bamboozled, right? So I see a few comments here. You guys will probably see them live also on the right. But yeah, it was craziness. I remember people were messaging me. I have like 96 unread messages. No idea what people text me about until days later. I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I lost that much money, right? So let's get right into this training, guys, right? And again, if you guys are watching this on Instagram live, make sure you send me a message or like it or whatever, because you won't get a copy after. So at least I know how to tag you after the fact, right? And I got my assistant in there helping out too. So let me just share my screen so you make sure this bad boy works. And as you guys know, I'm not the best with tech as much as I'm kind of a geek. I usually have somebody doing this. So bear with me, guys, bear with me, all right? So let me get this going. I have like multiple screens going right here. Awesome, guys. All right. So we're going to go over some pretty cool stuff today, just because I get a lot of questions when it comes down to this business specifically. And again, we're talking about the digital payment business, right? I get a lot of like questions in general, right? Sometimes with like marketing, sometimes with like, scaling, or like just talking to team members. And the one thing that really stood out to me nowadays is that like most people just aren't using AI. Okay. And not like the hype AI, but I'm saying like just using things to be more efficient. And on top of that, there's the complete opposite side. There are people that are stressing themselves out about AI. And I used to be that guy. I'm gonna tell you right now, I used to be that guy where I was like, oh my goodness, jobs are getting taken over, et cetera. And especially when I actually quit law enforcement too, that was a big deal. But a lot of it was just like, man, I don't feel like my worth here anymore, right? So the reason I say this is because if you're able to build systems, if you're able to build processes, if you're able to build something that you feel comfortable with, you're not going to worry about AI. You're not going to worry about the next investment, the next thing like that, because ultimately you have that internal confidence. Like, hey, you know what? There's going to be new tech. There's going to be new problems, right? In business, more money, more problems. And I'm going to figure out a solution. Right? So if you can take anything away from this, guys, maybe it's the mindset aspect, but when it comes down to business is literally just a self-development journey. That's it. I found this out over the course of years. I felt like a fish in a fishbowl. Like, what the hell is water? Like, I'm swimming around, like, didn't realize the world was so big. Once you venture into business, you guys start realizing this, especially with multiple businesses, you start realizing like it's really going to test your character, right? So let's get right into today's training, right? We're going to go over a few different things. The first thing is actually going to be, all right, the beginner's mistakes, or the basics when it comes down to this business, because I get this question all the time. So I always try to start off with the foundations. And then from there, what we're going to do is we're going to cover using AI to find locations. I'm going to go over some pretty cool things, all right? Some hidden things. We haven't brought it out in marketing yet, so you guys will be the first ones to see this. And then the other thing is going to be a step-by-step plan. And what I mean by that is like literally, if you want to start this business on your own today, like in the next 30 minutes, you will be able to. And I say 30 minutes because we're powering through this, guys, right? So if you're excited and you're like, oh, let's freaking do this. Let's make some freaking money, get them. I want you to comment mindset below. Comment mindset, right? Because I do this live every single week. Rain or shine, it could be Christmas. We're going to be here because ultimately, I believe this education should be out there for you. And if you want to take advantage with myself and my company, awesome. If not, just tag me when you guys are successful too, right? So I'm seeing some comments over here. Badass, guys. All right. And then Loner, I have my team in here. If you guys can just check the comments also in the webinar too, because I'm sure there's gonna be some questions when I go into a Q&A too. All right. So let's break this down, guys. Right. A little bit of background. Most people ask like, hey, you know, how did you even get into this? Like try to figure this out. And, you know, ultimately I always say this, right? Because I always look back and I say, how the hell did I end up in this situation? And I say, it all started with a decision. Okay. And what I mean by that is ultimately it was just a matter of like being in a bad spot at the bad time, leading to a good spot in a good time. And it seems so simple, but I'm telling you guys right now, it's there's a lot of trials and tribulations, right? So when business and in finances in general, guys, I say there's two seasons. And I got this from a pretty big influencer also, because I'll tell you guys something right now, right? This is a story most people did not know, right? So there's actually a pretty big influencer. Most of you guys probably know, Alex Ramosi, right? And before he was like very popular, I don't know how I stumbled across him. One of my closest friends from the Marines, you know, he grew up in the hood. I was working the other side of law enforcement. He's like, hey man, you should check this guy out. There's this dude with a tank top. He's like writing on a whiteboard and stuff. He's talking about business, right? So got hooked. And this is years ago, guys, years ago. So it actually got to the point, right? This is very funny. I got to the point where every single day in my patrol car, I would just be listening to podcasts, business podcasts, YouTube videos. And you're talking about, this is like at least 9 years ago. Okay. And so the funny part is this, right? I actually told the story the other day to somebody and they're like, well, you're out of your mind, man. I was like, no, I got the body worn camera footage. I remember specifically, I had somebody in my back seat, right? They were going for some serious charges. I'm talking about like they did a shooting. Somebody almost died. Like it was some serious stuff, right? We're on the way to the jail, right? And we got the podcast going, talking about business and stuff. And the dude's in the back seat like this, like looking at me like, hey man, what's going on over there? Because you're not playing music, right? You're 106 in the Bay Area or whatever. And it's talking about, hey, you know, you got to do scaling. And then when your leads cost this much, you got to actually reinvest and all this good stuff. And the guy's like, man, this guy's got some good info. And me and my partner look at each other and we're like, this guy's going in for like attempted murder right now. And, you know, innocent until proven guilty, even though he was on surveillance cameras. But it was the funniest thing because the entire conversation or the entire ride there, we're having a conversation about business. And I'm like, this is craziness. That's how you know this is the one thing that combines all these people is the fact that we're all fighting for the same thing. It's just for the security, the tribe, the aspect of like just the independence. And it all brings us together, which is why I love talking about business, guys, right? So let's get right into it. So at this point, right, this is what I call like the seasonal learning, right? There's two seasons called the seasonal learning, season earning. And the reason why I say this is because sometimes you have to kind of get through this point. I was talking to a good friend of mine earlier today who was having a problem. And you have to get past the seasonal learning to actually get to the revenue, right? So for myself, right, what ended up happening, really funny story, right? Enlisted into the Marines at the age of 18, right? And the reason why, just so you guys know, the reason why was because, you know, I thought to myself, like this whole traditional college thing, you know, retire at 60 and all that good stuff, that ain't for me. I don't know what it is, but I know it's not for me. And some of you guys are probably in that boat right now. We're just like, I don't know what I want to do, but I do know it's not going to be this thing right here. Right. So I'm listening to the Marines, and if you guys are in the military, shout out to your service. You know how this is. But I was just like, I just know this ain't for me. Right. So get out. Ended up in some dead end jobs. And the reason I bring this is because ultimately I ended up spiraling into debt. Right. And if you guys have ever been to like some decent debt, you realize that it just starts out of nowhere. You don't realize like the initial action you did, and then it just compounds and compounds and compounds, right? Some of you guys are in that spot right now. After talking to a lot of people that are looking to start like businesses in general, it's like staggering. I'm like, whoa, I thought 10 years ago it was bad, but like nowadays I get it, right? So got to a point where I was like, dude, I just can't afford my bills. This is ridiculous. I got these rotating balances on my credit cards. I got like $300 in my checking account. I'm like, this ain't gonna work, right? So I ended up making the decision to sleep in my Nissan Altima because I thought to myself, like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Instead of paying $1,500 a month for rent, which back then was a lot, okay, I thought, hey, I got to get out of this hole, right? So I tried to reset. And then finally, actually ran into this police officer. And, in California, we call them deputy sheriffs, right? Ran into the sheriff at some store randomly. And it was like this. It was like, it felt like spotlight was on, right? And I'm like, I'd never talked to police officers in the past. Like the only times was like, down in Camp Pendleton where you're drinking underage and all that good stuff. And so finally, I had to strike up this conversation and he's talking. He's like, dude, you should do this and do this and do that. And some of you guys have had that person in your life. Okay. Well, he sparks this massive change that actually happens. And he says, hey, you know what? You should probably try a career in law enforcement. And again, guys, I'm not pushing a career in law enforcement, even though it is a very noble service. But for me, that was the one thing and my way out. So I thought to myself, man, I can get, 6-figure salary. I don't need a degree, all this cool stuff. Okay. The reason I say this is because ultimately you're literally just one person away from changing your outcome. And it might be your family member. It might be a mentor. It might be a business partner. It might be an ex, who knows? But ultimately you're literally just one person away from changing your lifestyle, right? So fast forward, apply to a few departments. I get hired in Oakland, California after getting denied at all these different places. And back then, like I would apply like 30 places and they're like, nope, you're too young. We don't like you, whatever it was. It was like I was trying to be like a high school cheerleader. I wasn't a part of the cool club. So I start with a $90K a year salary, which is, really good when you think about it. But if you're from the Bay Area, you understand that things are pretty expensive, $6 gas and all that good stuff, right? And you think to yourself like, man, things got to be good. But here's the funny part. I almost freaking lose my job. And you're probably thinking like, dude, you have this bad situation. You should be grateful, whatever. And it was just the craziest situation. I was in a bad relationship, all this good stuff, guys. It was terrible. So fast forward and I get a second chance, right? Embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing because I got to start all over, 6 months of training again, starting with the new guys. It was just embarrassing at the moment. But when you end up realizing is like those embarrassing moments end up being just chapters in your life, right? So at this point, like I'm at a low point. I'm not going to lie. I'm at a low point. I'm like, man, this is freaking embarrassing. Like everyone's staring at me and all that. Little did I know, nobody cares. They don't care about who the hell Get 'em is. And they don't care who you are either. Okay. And it sounds harsh, but once you realize this, you realize this is your path to success also. So I got a question for you. How many of you guys have ever been in that position where you have to reset? You're just like, man, fuck it. I ain't got nothing else to do. I might as well do something else. And I'm not talking about like you're dead broke, but I'm like, you're just stuck. You got that glass ceiling. I want you to comment reset below. Comment reset. And the reason why I bring this up, guys, it's actually very simple, is that you're going to have a lot of these moments. It's happened to me a few times over the last few years, moving to Africa for months and just, sometimes killing some relationships. And it's just going to happen. It's a part of that season of learning, right? So at this point, you're just like, man, like something's got to give. So I finally graduate. I decide, fuck it. This is the only opportunity I have. I'm just going all in, which is another business principle. Is like sometimes you just got to go all in that one idea. So I got nothing else. I don't feel educated. I feel kind of dumb. I'm like, at least I can make a decent salary. So I'm working every single day. I'm talking about 95 hours a week, like every single day, Monday through Sunday, 15 hours a day. I'm like, I got to make this happen. I'm living in the basement in the hood, guys. Like I'm talking about on duty. I'm like, you're arresting people. Off duty, I'm going to the grocery store, which is really a liquor store at the corner. And I see somebody. I'm like, yep, I literally just talked to this guy a few hours ago, right? And not in a good way. So at this point, I'm like, fuck it. I got to make it happen. I got to save every single penny to get out of this rut. And you see in my bottom right over here, I literally have like the picture of like me living in the basement. I said, I'm going to go save every penny. I refuse to spend an extra $1. I refuse to even buy coffee, guys. I was that cheap at the point, right? And at this point, this is what I call, one of the best days that happen, right? And you guys will have this too. The crazy part is for me, it was when I was worth absolutely nothing. Zero. I had no money in my checking account. My last paycheck just hit on like the 15th and just all the debt was paid off. But here's the thing. You're probably like, dude, how is that the best day of your life? But it's just like the shackles are off for you. That weight is off your shoulders. And so the reason I bring this up is because at this point, I just found one thing that worked. And it was just save. But here's the thing. I finally realized like, wait, this is just not going to work. I got to the point where I'm like, wait, the 9 to 5 is just not going to fund. When you really think about it, you get an increase maybe like 3% every year or whatever it is for your job. Maybe get an extra sick day or whatever. And you realize you're just a high-priced slave. And it sucks to realize that sometimes, but ultimately you need that realization to feel very uncomfortable, to get that anxiety to say, I just got to do something different. I'm not saying quit, but I am saying just try something. I don't care what business it is, just do something. So from here, you think to myself, okay, I'm just going to start trying different businesses. All these guys online are talking about do businesses, blah, blah, blah. So I tried multiple ventures. I'm talking about, I did an e-commerce store, which was a very bad idea at the time because, you're working night shifts. I don't have the idea to run ads. Start doing some rental car businesses. Again, bad execution. Then I decide, you know what? These guys keep talking about real estate. I'm just going to invest in real estate. It's going to work out. But what you don't realize is the actual capital involved in doing that. So needless to say, a few things just didn't work out. So I get to the point where I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to open an actual store. I'm literally going to open a store in San Francisco, California, and this is going to be it, right? I'm going to be the freaking next Martha Stewart. I got a nice store. People are going to come in. Like, I'm going to be a multi-billionaire at this point. And as you can tell, that store is not around anymore. And the reason why is because I ended up losing $50,000 in that deal. And, I partnered with the wrong person, executed the wrong way. It was just a terrible idea. So at this point, you get to the point where you're like, man, I was on the verge of quitting. I thought to myself, like, what am I doing? Like, maybe this whole business thing, this investment thing, like maybe I'm just meant to follow the path that they're saying. So how many guys have actually been in that situation where you're like, you know what, man, fuck it. Nothing seems to work. Nothing seems to work. Some of you guys might be in that position right now. The reason I say this is because motivation alone is not going to drive you. And if you're relying on motivation, I'm telling you right now, you're going to fail. And it sucks to hear this, but ultimately you need a mission. So what I want you to do is comment mission below, comment mission. And the reason I say this is because your motivation will fade. It sucks. Sometimes you wake up and you're just drained. You're exhausted. You got, people nagging. You got the next shift. You got taxes doing like a day. You're just like, man, I don't know what to do. But ultimately, that mission is what drives you, whether it's retiring your family, whether it's taking care of your daughter, whether it's getting the nice freaking SVJ. Who cares? But you have to have that mission that's north facing. In the military, we say you have your azimuth, right? You have that direction of where you're going and your coordinates or whatever. This is what I'm talking about right now, guys. So let's talk about what we call the season of earning, okay? So at this point, I started thinking to myself, it's like, all right, I got to do something else. Because if I'm doing the same thing over and over and I'm getting the same result and I expect different results, this is what we call the definition of insanity, right? So I started investing in what I called residual income sources. And here's the reason why I bring this up, guys. I ran into this dude, right? I ran into this guy, was working patrols up in the hills in Oakland. Like, this is a very nice area. You're talking about multi-million-dollar houses, like CEOs, all that good stuff. And this guy was just relaxing. Like, the sunlight was on him. It felt like, the spotlight. He was just relaxing, drinking his like almond latte or whatever. And I was like, I just got to talk to this guy. I don't know why he's so relaxed and I'm amped up, but I got to change something. So I'm talking to this guy. He's like, yeah, man, like I got this, I got that, I got this. And there's the most boring businesses. You're talking about owning a parking lot. You're talking about like a few different like check cashing places and stuff. And I'm like, how do you have all these things? Like, dude, I just build something up. I get it to consistent cash flow and that's it. So while everyone else is worried about the next software, the next tech, the next whatever, they're chasing the next hype. But I'm just focusing on cash flow. So I thought to myself, okay, if this dude did it, bug it. It doesn't seem right, but I'm just going to try it because the proof is in the pudding. And the rule of thumb is this, guys. Do not ever listen to anybody else that hasn't done what you're looking to accomplish. So you have that mission, you have that desire of how much you want to make. Ultimately, don't listen to the naysayers, the friends that are going to turn into former friends. Just avoid those people. And the reason why is because they're just going to cause doubt. They're going to cause you to have some anxiety. They're going to cause you to think to yourself, like, maybe I'm not capable. But here's the thing. They're not doing what you're doing anyway. So who cares? What's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to get to the same position you're in anyway. Who freaking cares, right? So when it came down to it, this is when I started investing into what I call residual income sources. I thought to myself, I'm just going to find like the most boring thing and just try to make it work. Get that first dollar. Once I make the first dollar, I'm going to get the 100, then the 1,000, then the 10,000. That's all I'm focusing on. Everyone else is talking about the most fanciest business. I just don't care. So I started focusing on simple businesses that work. So you start thinking about things like, simple online income. You start thinking about real estate, digital asset residuals, crypto payment processing, whatever. But ultimately, I just focus on simple businesses. Now, you fast forward the boring years of doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting different results, which of course came because I focused on simple things that mattered. And you fast forward 8 years, I really thought to myself, hey, I'm just going to focus on things that require the most minimal amount of work. It's not that I'm lazy. I just don't have the time. And really, I just don't want to focus on this thing too, right? So at this point, you enter in, like I said, the season of earning. You fast forward a few years later, helped a few thousand people start some boring businesses also, scaled a few companies, all that fancy stuff, but eventually decided to quit the 9 to 5, right? And I'm going to tell you something that, I've never told anybody before, right? I might get canceled. My Instagram might get deleted tomorrow. I don't care, right? Ultimately, the reason why I actually quit my 9 to 5 was not because things weren't good. I was on the up and up. I was making a little over $200,000 a year. Things were working out, etc. But back in 2020, if you guys remember, there were some things happening, and they said, "Hey, you are required to do X, Y, and Z medication," right? And I'm sure you can read between the lines. And I thought to myself, you know what? I got a little over $1 million saved up. I have a decent network because I actually built that up. I have some cash flow coming in. Fuck it. Gave my 2 weeks notice. And the reason why was not because I'm a conspiracy theorist or anything like that. I thought to myself, if you don't live out by principles, how are you going to be proud about your future? How are you going to look back at yourself back in 2020, 2025, 2023, and look back and tell your children, your grandchildren, your friends of what you did at that moment? So I decided to quit law enforcement. I said, this isn't for me. If I'm going to be in the position where you're going to force me to do something, I can't wait to see what you force me to do in the future. I went all in on business, guys, right? And I say this not because there's some political background behind it. Ultimately, the reason you should think this way is that only you are going to be as authentic as possible for yourself. Like everyone else is going to impose their values on you. Everyone's going to tell you what they think, how you should act, how you should look, whatever. To be frank, I just tell people to shut the fuck up. And if you have kids watching, maybe put on the earphones right now, because ultimately I got to a point where I said, you know what, man, if you're going to try to force me to do something, this ain't for me. And if you're in the same boat right now, guys, I'm telling you guys right now, stick to your principles. Stick to whatever you believe in, whether it's some crazy idea or whatever, but at least you'll be proud of the decisions you make, guys, right? So why does this even matter? Here's the reason why. Like I mentioned, your actions today will actually set the foundation for your future chapter. And this is just a book, guys. Ultimately, this is the book of your life and what you are willing to do to get to the next level, right? So if you're ready and you're like, hey, you know what, man, it's time to make some money. Like, forget what everyone else is saying. I got these naysayers. I got this anxiety. I got these things going on. I want you to comment now below. Comment now. And the reason why is because ultimately, let's be frank, guys, there's no time like now. If you have that quote unquote stupid idea and it works, just go all in, because what ends up happening is you turn into that Mr. Beast. You turn into that Hermosi. You turn into Speed, where all of a sudden you go from stupid to renowned. All right. So what I want to do is actually break down the basics of starting this business, guys. Okay. Now, I went into it was more of like an emotional side, more of like a mindset side, but it really matters for business because you're going to be faced with these issues, whether you're doing this business, whether you're doing anything else, it doesn't matter, right? So let's talk about the actual background for starting a digital payment processing business, right? Now, before we can actually get into that, what I do have to break down is the industry, because one of the most common questions is like, hey, again, I'm like, why don't I just do like credit cards or like this or that? And, my answer is you can do it. But ultimately, it comes down to this is something new. This is something that makes sense. It's very logical. But for you to even do this, you want to educate yourself in business in general. Okay. So when we talk about payment processing, guys, it's actually very simple. Right. I come from, traditional payment processing where, you go to a business, they charge you a percentage. Usually it's about 3% or 4% if they're, structuring it the right way. But ultimately, in general, with payments, like when you're paying with a credit card, you get charged a fee. Right. And it's getting paid to somewhere. The 2 to 4% is like the biggest industry right now. So there's a few different industries that make money off of this, right? You have the different banks, you have the processors, so we call them ISOs, payment acquirers, whatever. If you're in the space, there's technical terms. And then there's individuals just like yourself. So ultimately, the way you have to think about this is when that fee is charged to you to pay with your credit card, somebody actually owns a simple device. They own a very simple device, and they're able to actually capitalize on charging you that fee, okay? So you ask yourself, well, who actually makes that? And it's usually everyday individuals just like yourself, where you can generate an extra $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month. Okay. And you can obviously do more, but I say some realistic numbers. And ultimately, you got to think to yourself, it's like, hey, this is just a boring business. You're just just profiting off of the arbitrage, as we call it. Okay. Now, the question always is like, well, why does this even matter? Like, we're talking about digital payments, the future, crypto, all that good stuff. Well, the reason I say this is you have to look at what we call the total addressable market, right? And this is, a business term, but essentially you think to yourself is like, how much money is actually being made? And in traditional payments in general, you're talking about Visa, MasterCard, Bank of America, whatever, they're at over $100 billion in profit. And I'm telling you this right now, it's literally that $1 moving to someone else's account. That's where the money is. It's the movement of money. And that's what we're focusing on as a simple business. We call it arbitrage. transaction fees, whatever. But ultimately, you're just being that middleman, right? Now, with this industry itself, there's thousands of people involved, okay? Like some of the people that maybe some of your neighbors are like, how do they afford that nice car? Literally, they're doing something like this on the side. They just don't want to talk about it because it's very competitive. And to be frank, it's made a lot of people rich. Like I know a lot of investors and entrepreneurs that have gone into this business and they're doing $10,000, $12,000, $13,000 a month. And this is in addition to whatever other business or other income source they have also. It's a great opportunity. It's actually a phenomenal opportunity, but there's a big but at the end, guys. And you always want to pay attention to the but, okay? It's very competitive. It's very competitive. It's a great industry, like I mentioned, to get into, but there's more and more people getting into the same market. And the other thing is it's heavy on sales. It is heavy on sales because you have to go into businesses, you got to talk to them, you got to, objection handle, all that good stuff. And I was personally involved, helped hundreds and hundreds of clients. You probably know the prior client company I was with, but essentially what I realized was something pretty big in the beginning of 2025, right? And, obviously there's an inauguration, president got elected, et cetera. But what I realized was maybe this is not the thing I need to be focusing on, right? And I'll be frank, I got something in Met. The pivot it was because I was in law enforcement for so long. And I was always doing this. I was always involved in crypto. And if you guys know, like the majority of my money actually came from digital assets. That's what it came from. And so you see over here, screenshot, whatever, social proof. But ultimately, I was always in all this space. So I was that geek. I was that techie saying, hey guys, this is the future. Before, when people changed the scam and all that good stuff. Okay. And before this was the new thing, because right now, the news is pivoting. They're saying, hey, you should invest into this. You got all these big companies, whatever. But ultimately, there was those geeks behind the scenes saying like, hey, this is probably the shift that we're going to have, especially in 2026. So when this opportunity came, I thought to myself, I was like, man, I cannot focus on anything else. It would be so disingenuous. It would be so fake to my character. And if I quit law enforcement from, some political things that were happening, then you realize like sometimes you got to operate out of principle. So I thought to myself, I was like, hey, I can't be doing anything else. So at this point, that's when I started to focus on what I call the digital payment business. So let's break down exactly what you need to do to be successful with this with 4 pillars. It's literally 4 steps you can follow right now. So if you got a pen and paper, if you have a notepad, which, literally I always have a notepad with me at all times, this is exactly what we need to pay attention to right now, guys. All right. So this is what we call beginners 101, the mandatory steps to actually get started with a digital payment business. All right. But before we get started, I got a question for you. I always got questions. You always got to have questions to be getting to the next level. How many of you, I'll say you watching this right now, how many businesses have you been to that accept crypto payments? If you've just been to one, I want you to comment me below. Comment me. Just one business that accepts crypto payments. That's it. I want you to comment me below, right? And I'll give you guys a second because there is going to be the delay. You guys see the comments on the right over here. Let me see if I can get this bigger. I see Mary, Lona, Twan, Phillips. What's going on, guys? So the reason I say this is because you got to ask yourself, like, why did that even stand out to you? Like, why did it stand out that they were accepting crypto payments? It's because it's extremely rare right now. Think about it. Think about how many businesses you go to on a daily basis, whether you're going to Starbucks, whether you're getting some freaking coffee somewhere, whatever it is. If they don't accept crypto payments, this is a phenomenal opportunity. And it was extremely rare to happen until now. And I'm going to break down some recent things that have happened that is absolutely massive in this industry, right? So I got some actual some news articles right over here that you'll see. There's some massive changes happening. And it's behind the scenes. Most people don't really pay attention. Now there's an uptick of articles, but you start looking at some of these companies and you realize like, wait a second, I recognize some of these companies. You got PayPal over here saying, hey, we're going to accept crypto payments for all of our merchants. You're talking about like over 28 million businesses. You have Block, which was formerly known as Square before. They're like all in on like, hey, we're doing crypto payments now. So if you've seen a Square reader somewhere, all of a sudden those are businesses accepting Bitcoin now, which is another story, but that's something for the future. And then this was actually from 2 hours ago. You got Stripe, one of the biggest payment acquirers or payment like software companies, saying, hey, we're going to start rolling out subscriptions with crypto payments. So the question I always ask myself is like, wait a second, I know I'm not really like the smartest person when it comes down to the space, but I do know that these are some multi-billion-dollar companies and they have some pretty smart guys that really focus on this and they don't make decisions overnight. So the reason I say this is when it comes down to anything in business or investment opportunities or whatever, if it's rare, it's what we call your opportunity, meaning that It's that niche, and the riches are in the niches. If you've heard that statement, if you're able to find something that's a little more unique, a little more fringe, and you're able to take advantage of go all in, that's where you make a decent amount of cash flow, and you can pivot later on if you want, because this is just a matter of cash flow, guys. Okay. So let's talk about the 4 pillars to starting this actual business, right? Pillar number 1, guys, and it's 4 because these are the foundations, just like a home. It's actually going to be what we call your corporation and your bank. Okay. Very simple. This is like the fastest thing you can go through is if you haven't formed a business before, I mean, this is a whole nother story, but there's so many tax advantages. Like literally the US and Canada incentivize you to start businesses. They're just like, please start it. We will literally charge you less taxes. Now, are there some nuances? You got to talk to a CPA and all that good stuff? Yes. But if you start a business and you do write-offs appropriately within the law, you will save money. So essentially, you want to form that business. You want to actually get that business bank account. And a quick little story I have on this, just because most people are like, get them, what are you talking about? Like LLC, who cares? It's simple. It's simple, but it's not easy. Because if you don't realize the benefits, that's when you really fall into these pain points. And the way I found out about this was when I got sued for the first time. I'm not ashamed to admit this. I got sued for one of the first times. And in law enforcement, especially in California, you're used to getting sued, right? They have a new legislation and all that. But essentially, it came down to, I wrote a police report, recorded this guy. He said something. He said, I lied. I said, well, it's literally on my camera. You're saying that. But essentially, if you guys know, like California, people like to settle, all that good stuff. But the eye opener was this. I had things on the side profiting for me, and they asked me to list out assets. And I thought to myself, like, well, wait a second, guys. Like, I worked for this. This is literally blood, sweat, and tears. What do you mean I got to tell you how much I own? It's like, well, don't worry about it. And again, guys, if anybody ever tells you don't worry about it, but to do something, you're probably going to get screwed. Let you know right now. I learned this from a lot of government work. But essentially, it was like, hey, if you lose this, we may go after your assets. And that's when I realized is that, hey, if you're not protecting your assets, whether it's your home, your vehicle, whatever it is, like you're just setting yourself up for failure. Because unfortunately, in this space and in general, like with business and the way we are going as society, is we're in this point where people like to sue you. And if you're not protecting your assets, I'm telling you right now, like somebody's going to come for it because they're going to realize, like, wait a second, maybe the clothes you're wearing has been changing. Maybe the car you're driving is a little nicer. And there's somebody out there watching you saying, hey, I'm going to get what you have, right? So that's going to be pillar number 1, which is going to be the actual foundational step, which is your business and your bank account. Okay. From there, we start looking at a processing partner. Okay. Very simple, but essentially what this means is what you're doing is finding a company to handle those transactions because you're not going to be doing it. You're not literally accepting somebody's crypto and running to the bank and getting cash. It's not going to happen. So typically you want to partner with a company that says, hey, you know what? We're going to convert it from cash to crypto or vice versa. They handle that for you so you can focus on what we call needle moving activities. And then we have pillar number 3. This is what I call the merchant locations. And I have a whole section. I'm going to break this down in about 2 minutes. And essentially what this is you're finding businesses around you that aren't accepting it. And if you commented me below, that means you found at least 1 or 2 businesses that accept it. That means the other 98% are opportunities for you, whether you're in Atlanta, whether you're in California, whether you're in Canada. It doesn't matter. These are opportunities for you. It's what I call pillar number 3. Pillar number 4 is the scaling plan. So basically, the way you want to think about this, very simply put, it is just the way you decide that I'm going to go from 1 to 10, 10 to 100. There's different methods. There's going to be paid ads you can do. You can actually just talk to different business owners. You can do referrals. You can wait on the side of the road and ask people if they want to accept payments. But essentially, this is one of the things you have to pay attention to because ultimately what ends up happening is we don't plan. We wait for New Year's and we come up with some New Year's resolution. But essentially, you just approach something and you kind of have to have like the fuck it mentality initially. But as you start getting more and more success, you realize that, hey, I actually need to structure the way I'm doing this business. Right? So that's going to be the 4 pillars, simplified, down and dirty, 30 seconds. Now let's get into locations, guys. All right? But again, we're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about finding the best locations, the best ones to structure, what you need to do right now. I'm sure you're taking notes, but I do have a question. The question that always comes up, this is every single day. I get a message. You probably texted me this on Instagram earlier, but who even uses this, right? Because naturally you have to ask yourself, like, if I'm going to get into something, I got to make sure I'm going to make some money, right? So the answer is focusing on the best locations, but it's not just the best locations, it's the best locations now. So I'm going to break down exactly step by step the ones you should target, like literally the businesses that you should focus on right now to make the most bang for your buck, right? Location type number one, guys. All right, location type number one. And just so you guys know, I do have a cheat sheet on this. So if you do need a copy, just comment cheat sheet if you're on IG. So that way I send you a message, or Facebook, or on the webinar, and I'll send you this after the fact too. But location type number one is actually going to be high ticket businesses, right? And these are businesses that are right in front of you that maybe you don't frequent, but essentially there's other people that do. And the way I think about this, guys, is you don't have to personally do something to profit off of it. Like, you can own a Taco Bell and not eat the chalupas. Like, let's just be realistic. Or you can have a check cashing business and maybe you don't need to get a $200 loan. But there are an entire population of people that do that, and that's where the profit lies in. So we want to focus on high ticket businesses. So when we talk about high ticket businesses, a few different types. You start talking about jewelry stores, right? Which are actually like very popular. It's really interesting. If you've been to Miami or New York and you have like the Diamond District, you start realizing that when you're paying $5, $10, $15, $20,000, or what is it, like a diamond's the best gift for a woman or something like that, you start realizing there's alternative payments you want to have with that. And the reason why is actually very simple. Is charges. It comes down to chargebacks and it comes down to fees. If you're paying $10,000 for something and that merchant is immediately losing $300, that's money that goes into their employees' hands, that goes into workers' comp, etc. So there's all these different types of businesses you can focus on. And then when we start talking about high ticket, you start thinking of things like furniture, which traditionally you don't think, but even this desk that I got from IKEA, it was like $1,200. So you start thinking like these high ticket transactions are where you start actually profiting. And then the other thing is going to be medical services. So this is probably one of the most unique things. I was actually talking to a pretty big influencer, super cool guy, and he was telling me about a specific type of tattoo. And he's like, man, like this is going to be a game changer for me. So what do you mean? He's like, well, people pay like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. They go to Turkey, they come back, etc. And this is getting added into all the normal businesses right now. Like, what do you mean? He's like, well, no, this gets covered by like Medicare, gets covered by some of these insurances. But when they don't, they also pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 out of pocket. And they always pay out of pocket. So I naturally get people to pay me in crypto. Like, they just send it directly to me. So if I can just add in this, I add in the normal business, which is traditional payment processing, and I add in this, and you just combine them together. So if you haven't looked into this, I want you, like right after this training, start looking into like medical services, different types of tattoo businesses, different types of, specific surgeries or specific things that happen that aren't covered by insurance. And this is, man, when I talk about niches, like the riches are in this niche right here too. The next thing we start talking about is high-end brands, right? So some of you guys are, you guys are flossing on the weekends. You got the nice jeans, you got the nice pants, or the nice shoes, and you start paying $500, $600, $800, $900. Well, this is another industry also. And the way you want to think about this is when people profit off of digital assets, let's be realistic. A lot of times they just don't save it. They want to sell it. So when they're able to go to a business and say, oh, cool, I can get some type of discount for using what I have already, all of a sudden it takes them from buying maybe one thing to saying, hey, I want to buy the actual t-shirt too, or this or that. And that's where you start making some money off of this also, right? And the other business, guys, this is actually pretty recent. I'm gonna show you guys a screenshot. I was really proud of this, the client that got this down. But there are brokerages, right? And when I say brokerages, what I'm referring to is there are specific businesses that, they make money off arbitrage, but they charge very high tickets. So this is one of our clients. He just secured an account that's going to make him roughly, we're going to say about $6,000 to $8,000 a month, right? Which is absolutely crazy. How many of you guys would love to make $6,000, $7,000 a month off one location? What they do is they literally broker like high-end things like Ferraris, nicer cars, sometimes jets, or like some actual transactions that happen with these things. So the reason I say this is because a lot of these businesses are right in your face. You just don't pay attention to it. And when we start thinking about high ticket, ultimately we're thinking about places that charge $500, $600, $700 for something. It might be the strip club. It might be that random business that you buy the nice cigars for $200, $300. These are all different opportunities that are right in front of you. We just don't pay attention to it because we assume the business has been there. Why the hell would I profit off of that? Which is what we call imposter syndrome. But you start looking for these opportunities. And then from there, you start looking to other things like dealerships, right? How many guys have paid a deposit for getting a loan? Well, you start looking at all these people that all of a sudden are moving to this other financial system, and they're saying, you know what? I want to put $3,000, $5,000, or maybe even pay for the car itself, and you're the one lining yourself up to profit off of this specifically. The other thing we start looking at is tech and tourist places. So if you're in, some like the Bay Area, for example, or certain cities where you start having a lot of tourists, you start realizing that, as much as I love the US and I, had to move outside, you start realizing that a lot of the times outside the US, where they're actually way farther ahead of us. So as people start traveling to or start doing business with these businesses, they're going to use the things they're used to, especially in South America, where they say, okay, cool, I can pay with, Bitcoin, I can pay with USDC, whatever. These are all different opportunities for you. And then the last thing is going to be what I call high risk industries, right? So when we say high risk, it's not like, they're going to get robbed or whatever like that, because, I come from law enforcement. But what it is that traditional payments like credit cards, like, Visa and MasterCard, they will actually screw over these businesses, just to be frank. And if you're in the space, you know what I'm talking about. But essentially, because of what they sell, whether it's like CBD, whether it's, strip clubs or whatever it is, they get classified a certain way. And from there, they get these outrageous fees, and they have a lot of like contingencies, like they're holding their money and all that good stuff. So these become ripe for opportunities for you too. So naturally, the question you ask yourself is like, well, how do I find the best business, get them? Like how would you personally do it if you started from scratch? So I got a cheat sheet, like I mentioned. And if you want a copy of this, make sure you comment cheat below, comment cheat. And the reason why is because, at the end of the day, if you ain't cheating, you ain't winning. Meaning that, like, why work harder instead of working smarter? That's like one of the biggest things I had to learn to actually be more efficient. But I will send you a copy of this. If you need it, just comment cheat below, and I'll actually send you a copy of exactly what you need to do to find these businesses also, right? Now, let's talk about AI, guys, right? And I know a lot of you guys came on and you're like, hey, let's talk about AI, get them. So the reason I bring this up is because ultimately, I'm sure all of you guys have been interacting somehow, some way with AI, all right? And you're talking about maybe using it for like your essays. Maybe you're talking about just Googling things for like shopping, etc. But essentially, if you're not taking advantage of this right now, you're just literally working harder for no reason. If you're working a full-time job, if you have an investment fund, if you have a family and you're working twice as hard for the same reason, like it makes no sense. So when I'm using artificial intelligence, guys, right? And you're talking about ChatGPT, Sora for videos, or Manus, or whatever it is, there's a few different things. So I have a step-by-step approach that I follow before I use this, because it's not just a catch-all. It's not just, hey, I'm just going to enter in a prompt and I'm just going to magically make money. It doesn't happen, guys. It's just a high-priced assistant. So the first thing I actually look for is location targeting. And what I mean by that is I will actually go in my area and I'll say, hey, this is my zip code. These are my times of day that I'm available. What are the types of businesses that would work for me? And there's a lot of back and forth. It's like your personal assistant. But essentially, I use this, especially if you're traveling or you're thinking about targeting different areas, to find the best businesses right then and there, right? The next thing I actually like to do is script writing. So in this business, you got to talk to people, right? And if you're like me before, I wasn't that comfortable talking to people, especially talking to individuals on like a webinar. But you can use this to actually structure the step-by-step of actually how you're going to talk to that business owner. And sometimes it's as simple as, hey, you open up a conversation and say like, hey, how are you doing? Why aren't you doing X, Y, and Z, right? That's a simple way to do it. But essentially, you can use this to have your own personalized approach. Because let's be realistic, every single person in here has your own personality, whether you are extrovert, whether you're an introvert, or whether you have some, Pokemon cards you like to focus on. Essentially, you can use this to tailor your approach to actually scale this much faster. And it's going to be step 2. Step 3 is going to be practicing the actual conversations, right? And I'm not talking about be like Ready Player One, where you're just like have goggles on and you're talking to yourself. But if you're not role playing, and this is something we did in the law enforcement and the military, was we call dry firing. Like every single day, you're pulling your gun out of your holster, you're practicing this, you're talking to yourself, and you come off as like schizophrenic or crazy. But essentially, you're actually practicing. We call mirror neurons. You're practicing for that conversation, because let's be realistic. Imagine you go to a business and that business owner is like, yeah, you know what, I'm interested. And you're not ready for the questions. You're not ready for the reasons why they actually should do this or the common things that they're worried about. All of a sudden, you just drop that deal. And I promise you, it only happened once before you're like, okay, I got to start taking this thing seriously. But at the end of the day, there's a saying. You can do twice as much work on the front end and get it done. Or on the back end, you can say, you know what? This is actually something that I want to work harder for on the front end to get those deals, to get that passive income coming in. So step 3 is going to be using AI to actually practice these conversations you're going to have. And the 4th thing, this is going to be a game changer for you guys, right? How many of you guys know what a CRM is, right? I want you to comment CRM below. Comment CRM if you know what this is. And some of you guys are in sales, some of you guys are in business, some of you guys are just like, what the hell are you talking about? Get them. And I was the same way. I didn't know anything about anything before I got into business, and I kind of had to just figure this out, right? So essentially what this is you're going to have some type of database, and it can be a notepad, right? It's what we call a customer relationship manager, client relationship manager, whatever. But you're going to have some type of database that has all the information of all the people you've been talking to, right? It might be business owners. It might be friends. It might be people at the gym that you network with. And you're like, oh, this guy's going to be a potential person to work with. So the reason I bring this up is because traditionally you pay for this expensive software, you have to have these employees and all this good stuff. I'm going to break down the cheapest, and when I say cheapest, free CRM you can use right now. And you actually have access to it on your phone. It is Google Sheets. And this is probably one of the things you're like, what are you talking about? But you could literally just put in all this information on just a Google Sheet. And if you're using Microsoft Excel, we got to go to the cloud, guys, all right? It's the 21st century. But essentially, you can actually move all this stuff onto a Google Sheet. It's free. You just got a Gmail account or whatever. And on the bottom right, there's a little icon. And if you type your question into there based on the stuff in there, it's literally going to be your boss. It's going to tell you, hey, based on what you have here, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And if you want the step-by-step on exactly how this works, I want you to comment sheet below, comment sheet. And the reason why is I just had a specific training on this and how to take advantage, but this is like an absolute game changer. No one's paying attention. It's right in front of you, and it's literally going to be the cause of you making an extra dollar, right? Now, the thing you have to ask yourself is like, well, I have all this stuff together, get them. So like, what do I do? Well, after you get your first few locations, you talk to a few business owners, you place some devices, literally just like this. Well, all of a sudden, like you place it at a business, you're making passive income. You actually have to take a step back, because in business, there's 3 phases, right? There's the binary phase where it's like, hey, I just need to make it work. Then there's just the quantity where you're doing more and more of the same thing. And then there's going to be the quality phase, which is where you're at right now. You're at 5 businesses, you're at 10, you're at 15, you're like, you're feeling good, you make some passive income, you're like, how do I get to the next level? And doing the same thing is just not going to work. So literally what I learned the hard way was sometimes you just have to take a step back, a little drink your cappuccino, your cold brew or whatever. And then from there decide, okay, maybe the thing I'm doing right now worked for that level, but to get to the next level, I have to try something different. And you literally will ask 2 to 3 or maybe 4 questions, and you'll come up with a completely different strategy. And if you need help with this, send me a DM on Instagram if you're watching right now. If you're watching on the webinar, just comment below and I'll send you the actual thing to help you get started with this, right? Now, we have actually used AI to find and like structure the way we find locations. Well, the best thing you want to do is really focus on the most needle moving businesses, right? So what I want to cover is actually the actual ways that I think through whether I should even talk to somebody, right? And, you know, when it comes down to it, I'm not saying like discriminate, but ultimately you got to really value your time. If you have 2 hours extra a day or 30 minutes a week, you have to say, okay, for those 30 minutes, I really want to get my bang for my buck. So the one thing that most people don't pay attention to in this business is actually the fact that you want to focus on established businesses. That's it. You want to focus on established businesses. And the reason why is because, let's be realistic. What's the likelihood you go to a business and they have no sales, they haven't started whatsoever, and all of a sudden somebody comes in and want to pay with a digital payment? It's not going to happen, right? And as much as you want to be positive, you know, I'm in the space, it's not going to happen. So the first thing I do is only focus on established businesses. And then the other thing I look at is their hours of operation. So obviously the longer that's open, the best it is. Now, of course, there's e-commerce where it's 24/7, but if you're not focusing on websites, what can you do? You start looking at gas stations, you start looking at donut shops, you start looking at businesses that are open Monday through Sunday. These are some of the best performing locations because you naturally have more customers. And then the other thing is going to be foot traffic. So think about those local businesses, whether you're in Vegas, whether you're in Scottsdale, and you say, oh, you know what? Everyone goes to that business. You're just increasing the likelihood of your success because it comes down to being a numbers game sometimes. And then from there, it comes down to marketing, right? There's a saying in business, if nobody knows what you do, it doesn't matter, right? Like you talk about the iPhone, they marketed the hell out of it. And let's be realistic. Every single person has an iPad and an iPhone now. So grandma's cooking might be great, but when she's not on TikTok talking about how good it is, she's not going to turn into the next Martha Stewart. So what we want to do is focus on actually exposing ourselves, whether it's posting, being proud about whatever you do. But if you're able to market what you're doing, you will get more success. So just to recap, step by step, because obviously we've got the AI side, but essentially when it comes down to finding the locations, this is what we would focus on. We usually want to focus on high ticket businesses, tech and tourist traps, as we like to call them, dealerships, high risk, and ultimately remember one thing. It's going to be the path of least resistance, right? So in the next literally 60 seconds, I'm going to break down how you can start your business in 30 days or less. So I'm talking about, it's October 14th right now. By November 1st, you'll be up and running with your locations if you follow this process, right? And if you do need the recap, right? If you need the recap of anything I covered, I want you to comment guide below. If you're on IG, I'll send you a message, like this post or whatever. If you're watching live, I'll send you the replay also. So let's start with the 4 rules, right? In business in general, and this specifically, I follow these 4 rules at all times. The first thing is you always want to profit first. And what I mean by that is you literally want to say, all right, there's these guys that want to invest. I literally want to get my first dollar into my bank account. And it might seem selfish, but I'm telling you, when you have times like, a few days ago with that announcement in the news, you really start to worry about cash flow. So you always profit first. Take as much money out as possible. And the next thing is, we want to start with high fees. And this is kind of counterintuitive. You might think to yourself, I'm going to dissuade people from doing this. But the way you want to think about this is, if you start high and you say, hey, I'm going to charge 5%, 6%, 7%, you work your way down into a reasonable number that you really start making a decent amount of money. That business I showed you, which is based out of another country, it's a very low number. If you know how much revenue they do, you realize like, wait a second, to make that $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, it's like, I'm talking about a fraction of a percent. But if you're able to start high and profit as much as possible and negotiate, this is usually how you get the best deals. First of all, you get people thinking like they had a deal, and then you actually get referrals from this too. The third thing, the rule of three for this business, is going to be passing it on to customers, right? So when you talk to a business owner, the most common question you're gonna get is like, well, I don't want to get charged a fee. I just do X, Y, and Z. So if you can go there and say, hey, you know what? I'm not charging you anything. I'm literally giving you this device for free. You're gonna make more money because more people use this. In addition to that, there's no expense whatsoever. It becomes a no-brainer. And in sales and business and marketing, you want to have what we call irresistible offers or no-brainer offers. That's what it comes down to this business also. So rule number 3. And then from there, we want to start talking about finding those locations step by step. So it's a pretty simple process that I follow, that I was able to, get a few spots, go like ground pound, find some business to work with, and get this business up and running behind the scenes while no one was paying attention. The first thing I did was I just targeted local businesses. That's it. I literally just focused on all the businesses around me, all the ones I went to, where I buy these water bottles, where I get coffee, where I get dinner. I literally just started with conversations. And those conversations were just a matter of keeping it simple. As much as like we're talking about this and I'm using third grade language, the reason why is because simplicity scales and complexity fails. And if you're in business for a while, you start realizing this. The people that start using big words and they start talking about all these complex subjects, they usually don't get far. But the ones that are like, hey, I just want to make it work, you start realizing they're the most profitable because they just focus on simple things that make sense. So of course, you want to have that script ready. And the reason why is because when you talk to these business owners, you're going to be nervous. You go in there and you're offering something new. Let's be realistic. You're going to have that baseball in your stomach. You're going to say, you know what? I'm very uncomfortable. I'm not really sure what I want to do with this. So usually you want to have a script ready to start with. It's a crawl, walk, run approach. It's the same thing we did in law enforcement. Like when you get started, you're brand new, you get cut loose, and you're like, man, I don't know what, I don't even know how to point to the sky. So you have to have these different frameworks to follow to actually be successful with this. And then from there, we want to bring a physical demonstration. So you talk to a business owner, they ask them like, well, what does this look like? Because a lot of us are just visual learners also. So essentially you want to have some type of device, maybe something that's processing it, some marketing materials, etc. If you need help with that, send me a message. But that's it. You just bring something visual for them to understand to start closing deals back to back to back. And then one of the most important things is probably going to be the final thing. Just provide value. Everybody knows when you're getting sold. Let's be realistic. You go to the car dealership, they're like, hey, well, do you want those nice carpets, etc.? You go to the mall and they're trying to sell you perfume, and you're just like, man, like sometimes you just don't want to be sold. I'm to that point now. I'm like, just don't talk to me. So if you're able to provide value, you say, hey, man, you got this wrong, you got this, but I'm going to provide the solution. It just turns into a natural conversation, and you start having more and more and more people start to want to work with you. Because let's be realistic. People work with people they like. That's it. It comes down to, do I like that person? Do I want to pick up the phone call? So if you're able to consistently provide value to that person, that's when you're actually going to start having success. And the last thing, guys, this is the most important. Repeat the same process over and over and over and have urgency. And the reason I say this is because the fact that you're watching this, whether it's a replay, whether it's live, whatever, shows that you're like, there might be something here. And here's the thing. Other people are seeing the same thing. If you look at the comments, you look at the ads, you look at everything, you start realizing there's a lot of momentum moving towards this direction. The simple concept of, okay, cool, we like crypto. And then the other side of like, well, we need to accept payments. And you combine the two together with a very simple business, you start realizing this is a massive opportunity. So scale as fast as possible. Don't be happy with 1. Don't be happy with 5. Don't be happy with 10, because you're going to look back on that chapter of your business career, as I call it. And when people are asking, like, how did you scale this business so far? Then you start realizing I just literally had urgency. And the best business owners just have urgency in this space, guys, right? Now, if you do want to learn how to build this business, right? if you want to have a conversation with my team members, if you want to get one of these cheat sheets, just go to our website, digitalresiduals.co. It's the link in my bio. It's in my emails. It's everywhere. I have a step-by-step guide. You can schedule a call with my team members to break this down with you also. But essentially, all this is, guys, is a simple business that makes sense. It's not sexy. I'm telling you right now, this is not the sexiest thing. You're not selling like fancy items online or whatever. But essentially, you have this simple business that makes you consistent income that you can build up. You can chisel away at the expenses, whether it's your car payment, whether it's, your vacation fund or your kid's ballet lesson. It doesn't matter, but this is just an opportunity for you to build something on the side, guys, right? So that's all I got for today, guys. I try to keep it as simple as possible because, let's be realistic. This business is simple. There's not much to talk about, but it's just a matter of taking action sometimes. So again, guys, my name is Adam Tekla, founder of Digital Residuals. If you do want a replay of this training, make sure you comment below. If you're on Instagram, make sure you send me a message. I have one of my assistants on there also monitoring the messages to get you those resources. But until then, guys, enjoy the rest of the evening, and I'll catch you next week, 8 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday, October 21st. October 21st, guys. That's how you know these are live, guys, right? Peace.